know that we would love to believe that artists just pour hours and hours and hours over songwriting and practicing and all of this. But you know what? You need to spend some hours intentionally every week figuring out what your marketing strategy is and what your marketing plan is. And you're going to have different campaigns for each thing that you're trying to sell. So your overall marketing strategy obviously is getting your name out there, but really specific, right? I want to have 500 people in the Los Angeles area know my name and the kind of music I sing by December 2023. Great. That's amazing. How are we going to do that? Well, I'm going to do 3 campaigns. I'm going to do a social media blitz where I am, and then I'm going to figure out the tactics for that. I'm going to take little clips and make, vertical video. And then I'm going to do pictures of my lyrics. And then in the blurb, talk about how I wrote that one line of the lyric. I don't care what your campaign is. But know that part of your time is going to be that.
Welcome to the Vocal Lab. I'm Sarah Ramsey, and this show aims to pull back the curtain on the entertainment industry, where veterans give up-and-coming artists some of the information they wish they'd had when they were just starting out. Sort of a music industry primer, if you will. Thanks for joining us on the Vocal Lab. This is actually part 2 of our interview. So if you haven't caught part 1 yet, head back to the episode right before this one and get all caught up, and then join us back here. We'll see you soon. Let's talk a little bit about artists who maybe don't have management or a label working for them yet. Just more the working singer. And there's lots of us who, that's how I spent my career. I was never the label singer. I was the working singer. And maybe that singer is working towards a deal, or maybe they just love their life as a working musician. But when you really are just doing it all for yourself, and, so the writers aren't so fancy yet. There's no green M&Ms yet. There's some challenges you really come up agast. Do you want to talk a little bit about those kind of challenges and how to navigate them?
Time management. Is the number one. Time management. And when I say time, so for listeners who don't know me, because you know that I harp on this all the time, Sarah, but when I say time, I mean mental energy and capacity and hours in the day. To me, time encompasses capacity. Time is the only non-renewable resource. You can always make more money, but you cannot make more time. So the biggest thing I see is people not learning time management and then project management skills. So, for example, people not having systems around booking gigs, not having templates. I mean, something as simple as templated emails, templated scripts, they write out scripts about how they could potentially have a conversation with a booking agent or the booking for a venue, because I'm assuming if they're not labeled yet, we're still doing relatively small gigs, under $100,000 gigs, right? And then also, if we're just starting out, we're talking about people who are just trying to get paid at a coffee shop, right? That kind of thing. So if you're still in that place where you're I'm just trying to get paid at the coffee shop and the library and, my small town's art festival,
a local pub.
Yeah, exactly. If we're there, then it's have some scripts. What are the things that what are the things? How are you going to ask for the gig? How are you going to enter a relationship with that venue? What are the things that that you can provide for that venue? Show that you understand the venue side of you. I think a lot of artists don't actually understand what's at stake for venues. And so they get they don't understand why they're not getting offered a lot of money. And if you can figure out your role in making that night lucrative, the night that you're gigging at, if you can help that venue become lucrative, they will bring you back. 100%. know how to talk to sound people.
Yes.
Know how to run your own sound if it's a venue where they're going to expect you to run your own sound.
I just want to circle back for one, and then you keep going on. But knowing how to talk to sound people, like if you are working with a sound person, the first thing you do is go and make friends with them. Do not go and be an asshole to the sound person, because they will make your night hell. They have the capability to do so.
They will. And this is where it takes a little emotional intelligence too, because let's just face it, when you're still in like coffee shop, pub land, you're going to get sound people that don't know what the fuck they're doing.
Yep.
And they're going to be drunk and they're going to be high and they're going to be like, let's just call it like it is.
Yeah.
You still have to manage that person in a way where they feel that you understand that they think they're important.
Yeah.
Which they are as humans. And I mean, you will, and then be encouraged that this is just, you don't have to put up with that long term. And I'm not, you can say, well, I wanted to gig at this place. Venue asks you back and you say, venue, I would love, I know we brought in so many good, so much good revenue for that night. It was great to see, a packed out house. I got to be honest with you. So and who was drunk at the wheel, man. They were drunk at the knobs.
Yep.
Drunk at the faders. and I'm wondering if we can figure out either a higher pay rate for me to bring in a sound person, like how much, or if we can not have that sound person work on this night. Like when because again, this is the business aspect. When you are a value add to the venue, they want you back because they make more money when you bring your audience.
Right.
So you will have a little bit of clout there if you're making the venue good money. So back to the time management, I know that we would love to believe that artists just pour hours and hours and hours over songwriting and practicing and all of this. But you know what? You need to spend some hours intentionally every week figuring out what your marketing strategy is and what your marketing plan is. And you're going to have different campaigns for each thing that you're trying to sell. So your overall marketing strategy obviously is getting your name out there, but really specific, right? I want to have 500 people in the Los Angeles area know my name and the kind of music I sing by December 2023. Great. That's amazing. How are we going to do that? Well, I'm going to do 3 campaigns. I'm going to do a social media blitz where I am, and then I'm going to figure out the tactics for that. I'm going to take little clips and make, vertical video. And then I'm going to do pictures of my lyrics, and then in the blurb, like talk about how I wrote that one line of the lyric. And then another campaign I'm going to do is I'm going to go on a coffee shop tour, and that's what I'm going to call it, the coffee shop tour. And I'm going to put it up on my website, and then I'm going to circle around social media around that. And it's all coffee shops in, Ventura and over here in Thousand Oaks and over here, right up wherever. And then, my third campaign is that I'm going to stand on a street corner with a sign that says, check out so-and-so music. I don't care what your campaign is. But know that part of your time is going to be that marketing and that branding. The other thing, because you said, well, what else?
Oh, I was just talking about when you're doing it all for yourself, we come up against some different challenges than when we are like a labeled artist, and just talking about the challenges and how to navigate them.
So time management, number 1, understanding your own capacity.
Yeah.
So that when you are doing everything, because here, let's also call this like it is. When you're at this level and you're also having a job. And if you think that it's selling out,
unless you're independently wealthy,
unless you're independently wealthy, but if you think it's selling out to like make money at a job while you're building your artist career, that is also a very foolish perspective, because your Maslow's hierarchy of needs, food and shelter and water, have to be taken care of in order for you to be a creative being. Like, you literally will not be able to continue to produce your art if you
don't have your basics taken care of.
Right. And I know we hear stories about people who like did it through the poverty, but that's a glorification of something that is mostly not true. That is actually mostly not how it happens. And
at best is the hardest possible way to make it happen. Even if there is truth in it, it is the hardest possible way to walk that road.
Yeah. I would say I am never in judgment of anyone who wants to recreationally enjoy substances.
Right.
I think you do you. But when it comes to capacity, these things reduce your capacity. They reduce your decision-making skills. They increase the amount of time you need physical rest in order to get it out of your systems and all of this. So it's just be calculated about it. Be intentional about it. When you know you're going to do a little partying, when you know you're going to stay up too late, don't try to plan like a major songwriting session the next day. Like, that's just dumb sugar plum, like be thoughtful about how you're using your time. Another challenge is, get the job. If money is tight, get the job. I don't care if it's McDonald's. I don't care if it's Tom Hortons. I don't care. Get the job and take care of your financial needs. Other challenges, the people don't get it. People don't get what you're doing. They're like, what the heck? Why aren't you a lawyer or a doctor or something, air quotes, stable?
Yeah.
And so surround yourself with people who understand what it's like to be a gigging artist.
Yeah.
And what it's like to create the brand. This is actually where it can be helpful to think of yourself like a business, because then you can look at these people and be like, do you know that most small businesses take 5 to 7 years to even get established? And I'm on year 3 of trying to be established as an artist. So I think I'm fine.
Yeah.
It's the overnight success that takes 25 years kind of thing. Everyone thinks like, oh, this will be fast. It's like, no, building a business is not fast. And you are a business. You're a brand. You have to go from like your friends knowing you to strangers knowing you. That takes time. So I'd say fund that some other way, doing what you need to do, getting that name out. And don't even worry about it for at least 5 years.
Yeah. In
terms of like, is this failing or succeeding? If you've put together some wise structures around yourself, when you're intentional about it, you can't sit on your butt and wonder why it didn't work in 5 years. It didn't work because you were on your butt.
Fair. Yes. And I think that piece is really, common with artists, there's the old saying, failure to plan is to plan to fail. And and we spend a lot of time developing our artistry, and a lot of us, I'm just talking about artists as a whole population, there's not the same kind of intentionality put into building a plan, building some marketing, like, how am I going to get from A to B? Because hopes and prayers aren't going to do it.
Yeah. You bring up such a great point around, I think part of it is the way our brains work. I think there's also a lot of neurodivergence in artists in general.
Yeah.
And I say that as a person with neurodivergence. So I think that there's a misunderstanding about what planning is too. I think people don't actually know how to plan. Again, this kind of goes back to the project management and the challenges, right? Is like, planning is a skill. You did not pop out of your mama knowing how to plan. Nobody does. And you have to learn how to do that. You have to learn what works for you and what kind of systems work for you to plan. But all a plan is can be a checklist. A plan can be a checklist. And it's just thinking through, what do I have to do? And if you're constantly saying, well, I don't know what to do. I don't know what to do. I don't know what to do. There's two things going on, I think. One of them is practical. You just need more knowledge, information. And then you need application. And that's very practical. But the other thing is, I don't believe you. I think you do know what you need, and you are either fearful of it or you are worried you're going to do it wrong. If you know what you need and you are not afraid to do it wrong, then you will figure out how to do it right. You will just do it. And then you will be like, oh, I screwed that up. And then you will do it again in a different way. And I really think a lot of people say, I don't know what to do, when what they really mean is, I'm worried about the decision I'm about to make.
I mean, I think this is pervasive in our culture anyway, but I think it's a really prevalent thing in artistry. That fear of failure is that is front and center. I think for artists, and what we have to do is learn to fail forward.
Yeah. I always ask artists that I'm working with to define failure. When they say, oh, well, I might fail. I'm like, okay, what does that actually mean? And a lot of times this goes back to the identity thing. Because I mean, let's face it, especially if you want to be like a recording artist or a performing artist, you've got to have a little bit of narcissism in there. Yeah. Right? You have to want that feedback loop. Why would you do it? I mean, not everybody, but there's always exceptions to things. But usually when people say, oh, I'm afraid of failing, and when we define what that is, it's I'm afraid what people will think of me. And I always go back to this. You did not become an artist. If you only became an artist because you wanted people to like you, you need to do something else. And do this as a hobby. And I know that sounds harsh, but number one, that. But it's because you haven't figured out that you don't have control over that anyway. Yeah. Like if your version of failure is, I try this real hard and then nobody likes me, that tells me that you want to control how other people feel about you, which is always going to be a failure, no matter how successful. Yeah. So unpack what your fear of failure is. Is it that you're not going to make enough money? Is it that you're not going to be famous enough? Is it because our fears can be a great flashlight on what we actually have to do. They give us a lot of data. Fear gives us a lot of good data around where our actions need to go or don't go, right? So I'm afraid people won't like me. Okay, well, let's put aside the whole you can't control that anyway. What do you want people to like about you? Well, I want them to like my music. Okay, what do you want them to like about your music? Well, I want them to feel nurtured. Okay, is anything in your brand lining up with being nurturing? What about your brand colors? What about what you're wearing on stage? How about your banter in between sets? How are you nurturing? Now look, you are doing what you are in control of.
Right.
And then hopefully the icing on the cake will be that people felt communicated to in a way that you wanted to communicate. But that's the thing you can control. You can't control other people liking you.
And I think for what it's worth, I'm not sure. I don't know if you'll have anything to say about this or not, but
do I ever not have something to say? I mean, come on. Really?
I think that it's a very fine line between a fear of failure and a fear of success.
Because if I succeed, then I might fail.
Yeah.
Right. But that's so here's that. You want to get real deep. Now we're talking trauma responses.
Yeah.
Which I think, gosh darn diggity dong. Our trauma is such fodder for the healing that our art provides, right?
Mm-hmm.
Which I hate is the truth. But I mean, that is why we can be vehicles of emotion for other people, is because at some level we are attempting, intentionally or not, to somehow process trauma through our art.
Yep.
Whether we realize we're doing that or not. And that authenticity is a vibration in the universe, not to get overly woo about it, but that's people feel the energy shift when they know you are speaking or singing or performing a universal truth, or a truth that they have.
Yeah.
So it's interesting to think about that fear of success, because what does that come with? People won't like me. I mean, it's the same problem, right? What happens if you are successful? I won't know how to handle them. Like, what are the things you fear about being successful?
I mean, to me, that there's definitely been both sides of that coin. I'm very aware that the fear of success has been absolutely as prevalent as the fear of failure. And to me, it's because the success comes with a shit ton of responsibility.
Yeah. And
that's what it is.
Is responsibility framed for you have you been taught responsibility is a heavy thing?
Yeah. That's how it has felt for me. I have been, well, now we're going to have therapy here on the podcast, but yes. So for me in my life, short, just the short version, I have felt an imbalance of just a lot of responsibility for most of my life, a heavy burden of responsibility for most of my life, since childhood. So yes, the fear of responsibility is a very heavy thing for me.
Yeah. Isn't that so interesting? You're not the first person that has said that in response to that question when I'm working with folks. And I like to point out, but you're already responsible for all the good. Like you look at what you've created. You are responsible for this podcast. You are responsible for the joy that you're bringing to your clients. You are responsible for this new adventure we were just speaking of off tape. That is lucrative and putting you in a very nice position.
Yeah.
You are responsible for all that good. So what would happen if you got to be responsible for more of that good?
To be fair, I feel doing a lot of work in therapy, to be honest. And I feel like that is shifting for me. That doesn't feel as heavy as it used to. But I think when I was younger and wanted to be pursuing like a recording career and that kind of level of visibility as an artist, that was a lot more prevalent, that it was equally enticing and terrifying.
Yeah.
Because of that.
I know when I answer that question, you said visibility. I know when I answer that, what are you afraid of succeed? Like what makes you afraid of success is I have no problem talking to anyone. I get a lot of energy from this. I am an ambivert, an introvert, extrovert. But
me too.
I love stuff like this. I love speaking in groups, all of the things, but I get vulnerability hangovers real quick.
Yeah.
And I get visibility hangovers. When I put myself out there, I feel in my body and in my mind very tired and very, very tender. And so to me, while I love doing it and I'm glad to do it, I've had to learn that I need a few days. I mean, it's no coincidence for the listeners out there. It's no coincidence that I booked this on a Friday to talk with you, because I knew I was going to be sharing my thoughts and my brain and my mind and thinking and conversing. And I love this so much. And also I'm going to be fucking exhausted for 2 days after.
I so get that.
And it's this idea where, but now I can do it more. And I think that's what's happening for you too, is what I'm hearing you say in between the lines is like, now that I know that that's what I'm afraid of in the success, I can manage that, because my exhaustion and, your weight of responsibility, those, and whoever's listening, whatever your fear of success is, those things aren't things that are going to go away. Mm-hmm. Those are things that you learn to manage. Mm-hmm. So they become more familiar. And you get to a place where you're like, oh, I know how to deal with this. I hate having to deal with it, but I know what I'm doing when it comes to this thought. Yeah. I know what I'm doing when it comes to this limiting belief. And that could be another thing to think about with artists and challenges, is there's so many limiting beliefs that come through when you're still working out your artistry and you're still thinking about your career and all of that. And just like, give yourself a break that you don't have to solve. Like, don't try to solve everything. Yeah. Just manage it. And I mean, hey, I know a lot of people like cognitive behavioral therapy. I think that's a powerful modality. Mm-hmm. So is like acceptance and commitment therapy. Mm-hmm. Where you're like, oh, okay, I accept that this thing is, and then I'm going to commit to all of this. Yeah. But I know that seems kind of off topic for like entrepreneurship and business ownership, and
but it is and it isn't.
It is, but it's not. It's the meat of it. It's how do you handle yourself? How do you handle your? I'm pointing at my brain because podcast, but like, how do you handle what's in this brain? Because that is what makes you the artist. It's not your larynx. It's not your fingers on the guitar. It's not your four limbs playing the drums. It is your brain that makes you the artist. So you got to take care of it.
So that actually kind of comes into it. It's a different point, but I feel like it's so related. And that is, so there are times where we have to set boundaries as artists that can be very uncomfortable about like how we are treated. And sometimes those boundaries mean that we don't get the gig, or we lose money, or we, and yet the sort of that grit and the perseverance to change the way that we're treated is a really necessary piece of growth within our artistry and the growth of us as a business.
Yeah.
Do you want to talk a little bit about that?
Ooh.
I know it's a big one.
Yeah. That's like a whole other series of podcasts. So did I read this or I heard this? I don't know. I was having some conversation because I recently wrote a couple blogs around boundaries, like what boundaries were and stuff. And someone I came across in this research and talking about it, because it's also a module in one of the programs that we do, is like literally just teaching people what boundaries are and how to have them as artists and as creative business owners, or business owners in creative spaces. And it's this idea that the boundary is how you respond to when someone bumps against it. It's not the actual thing that they bumped against.
Yes.
And I think this is such a cool way to think about it. So let's say it's a boundary around the way someone's speaking to you. Mm-hmm. They don't know nobody knows how to treat you before you let them know how to treat you. Mm-hmm. It is very easy to have a boundary. It is very difficult to enforce a boundary.
Yes.
So there's where we go to like emotional intelligence and scripts, right? And someone kind of sasses at you or yells at you. The first thing is your lizard brain is probably going to want to like flip them off. Mm-hmm. And you're going to get defensive and angry. Mm-hmm. But you got to remember that's your lizard brain. That's your first gut response. You step away, you take a little break, 5 seconds even, respond with either a question to help give them an opportunity to clarify what they're really trying to communicate, or you acknowledge what you see in their behavior, or it feels like you're angry. When you're angry, I will not be spoken to in that way, and just let it sit. And chances are, because they're angry and they obviously couldn't keep themselves together, they're not going to respond kindly to that. But you've got to like know it and be like, just, you don't have to, being defensive back and yelling at someone about how to treat you is not a boundary. So learn to self-regulate. Learn to self-regulate and to kind of feel that sting of the defensiveness and that, oh my God, that person spoke to me that way. And like, and then how to respond from a place of power, not stomping power, like groundedness. As long as you are physically safe, obviously. Yes. I'm assuming that this is a physically safe situation.
Well, the one that really comes to mind for me, and it's funny because I see it, it's less that I see it in working bands in Vancouver and more that I see it like in online spaces, people talking about their working situations in other cities. I'm sure it happens here as well, but things like, you know, and it's typically female singers, although again, I'm vastly generalizing when I say that, but where there's been an illness issue and they are saying, I can't come to the gig and this is for everybody's safety. And there's pushback from the band leader saying, no, you need to show up, or you're going to screw us all, or, you know, whatever. It's like that kind of stuff where boundaries are not being respected. And there's that fear of like losing the money and losing future work if you stick to your boundary, you know, stick to your guns and say, no, I'm not doing this because I'm going to hurt myself. Those kind of things.
Yeah. Well, I think unpacking that, so that to me, that's a case by case, because I think you do have to take into account all those other things. And you have to be realistic about when you take it into account. So there's a difference between, if I don't show up to this gig, I'm not going to get hired again, being a true statement. And if I don't show up for this gig, I'm not going to get hired again, being a little bit drama, llama.
Yes.
Right.
Agreed.
And you have to be able to parse out which is true. Like, is it true that I will not get hired again if I take care of myself? If the answer is yes, then you have a new decision to make. Is this worth it for me? And I like to talk about that concept of like the velvet rope boundaries versus the brick wall boundary, right? And a velvet rope is there, you can move a velvet rope.
Yep.
So if you have a general boundary of not singing when you're sick, there might be some times where you're getting pushback. This is a really important gig. They are your longtime bandmates. They've been trying to get this gig for 6 years or something. You say, okay, I hear you. I am really sick. So what are we going to do together to make sure that I can get through this gig and not make all of you sick? So normally we do sets, 45-minute sets, and I sing 6 out of 9 songs. We're going to have to make that 4 out of 9 songs. I'm not going to do any banter. So bass player, you're going to have to take over the banter. You know, like that's about relationship building and solving a problem together. I'm going to wear masks. I'm not going to talk. I'm not going to do any merch selling. I'm not going to talk in between sets. I'm going to go back and like, then you have to figure out how to solve the problem. If it's like some yo-yo who's going to pay you $50 and he's just trying to strong arm you because he's a jerk, I can tell you're really upset. And also, it is not okay for me to put my long-term health, your long-term health, and my long-term moneymaker, I'm pointing at my larynx, my long-term moneymaker at risk for this gig. And I appreciate that this is angering and frustrating, but you don't need to blame me for taking care of myself. Handle that any way you want. But that's why you have to be able to say, where is my actual boundary?
Yeah.
You know, when it's money stuff, I think that's learning negotiation skills.
Yeah. Yeah.
You know, too. And then this is sales in general. You know, in order to sell a high quality product, you have to be willing to lose sales, which means in order to book high quality gigs, you have to be willing to say no to low quality gigs.
Yep.
Because the person booking the high quality gig isn't going to look at your gig sheet and be like, oh, they always take the gigs at like the not so great places. Mm-hmm. Right. And then I think about in terms of knowing what the gig is for. Mm-hmm. So you're like familiar with like Whiskey A Go-Go and like that kind of stuff in LA, those clubs where they're pay to play. Right. So they're really, really popular, famous Carnegie Hall. Right. It's this idea that if you play there, the lay audience member is going to think you are fancy. Well, yeah. And it's going to cost you some money. And it's not like they are literally leveraging the fact that they're Whiskey Go-Go, right? Like they're literally leveraging the fact that they're Carnegie Hall. So you are going to pay money in order to be allowed to use their brand in order to promote your fanciness.
Right. That
is probably, depending on your goals, not the best place to assert your boundaries around getting paid. Right? Yes. Because you know what you're buying into. You are buying into leveraging their brand to make you look fancy so that it looked like you got a really good gig. You know, Hard Rock can be the same depending on what city you're in. So, but if it's like a small time little place and they're like a wine bar down the street and they are like, oh, we'd love to have you play. We have like a little stage in the corner. We can like give you tips. Then that is a time when you can be like, I'm actually making your place more valuable. So maybe we're unclear about the role of this gig in both of our businesses, in both of our stories. So for me, the role of this gig is to help your venue make money and to have a location that I can share my art for people in a public space. For you, the goal of the gig is to bring in some cash, sell some more wine, have happy customers that are really enjoying the music so they stay longer and spend more money.
Spend more money.
Right? Like, so we'll need to come up with an amount that will honor that goal for both of us. And then maybe for the next gig, we can see how it goes and we can maybe figure that out later. But I'm happy to take the tips and let's work out what's going to be a good number for both of us. You know, because sometimes the venue owners don't even know what they're doing because they just think, oh, I have a restaurant, I have a wine bar, I have a thing. Wouldn't it be fun to have music? And they don't even have an ASCAP. You know, they don't even know that they have to have an ASCAP. So it's like, you know,
and they do not understand that doing it for the publicity is not a thing.
No, they don't get it. And you have to tell them that because they don't. Because where are they getting their information? Like they're getting their information through media. They're getting their information through maybe fellow venue owners. You know, they're making it up. They went into the business that they went into because that's what they wanted to be good at. They didn't want to be good at being an artist. So they're of course going to try to like, you know, exposure bucks. I mean, I have said to a venue before, like, I'm so grateful that you would like to give me, you know, an opportunity to create a larger audience. You're telling me that it's great exposure, but when I go look at your social media, you can flip the table there. Yeah. When I go look at your social media, when I go look and see how you market the artists, when I go and I see what kind of exposure you say you're going to pay me in, I don't see a return on investment. So I'm going to have to decline this.
That's a super valuable perspective, I think. Flipping the script like that.
At our numbers and see how much money we're going to make them. But if you're offering to pay me an exposure, then you better fucking expose me.
Yeah.
And that's why I say sometimes it's a good deal. Like there is this great place. I used to live in Silicon Valley, and I can't remember the name of it right now, but there was a big kind of like in the Santa Cruz Mountains winery, and they had a stage and a big stage, right? Yeah. And they would often have touring artists come in, kind of like a casino would and everything. Gosh, I feel so stupid for not being able to remember the name of this place. But I remember that like local artists would be invited to play there, and it was shit pay. You know, I mean, it was a couple $1,000, but like for a band of 7, like that shit pay, right? Yeah. But these people would have, I mean, this winery would like pack out houses.
Yeah.
You know, and it was beautiful amphitheater, and they had, you know, great wine and nosh and like members, you know, they had like a members packet, you know, it was great. It was such a great business model. And people would get all up in arms and say, oh, they only want to pay me this and not enough. And I'm like, listen, I get that they are underpaying, but like that's a 500 person. I think it was like 500 per. I've got to check. Fact check me on this. But it was not a shitty gig. Yeah. You were not going to have like a room of 20 people. You were going to have a nice chunk of people. Yeah. So I'm like, make sure your merch is all stacked up. Yeah. Make sure your banter has a lot about where to find you and what to do. Like that's a great opportunity. And you're getting, handed over a couple bucks to at least break even. Oh, that fine. But you have to be, that's the business side of it, right? It's like sometimes it's okay to get paid in exposure bucks because the exposure is actually bucks.
Is there anything else that you see missed or misunderstood by artists, or anything we haven't talked about today that you think just is really important for artists to know?
That you can do this.
Yeah.
You can do this. It is hard. And you can do this. And we've talked a lot about today. We talked a lot about kind of the uh-ohs and the watch outs and the what ifs, you know, but at the end of the day, just keep doing it. If you want to do this, just keep going. You'll learn, you'll figure it out. The universe is conspiring for you.
Yeah.
Trust it.
Well, Michelle, where can people find you? Web, socials, et cetera,
on the internet. So Instagram, I'm an old person, so I do Instagram and Facebook right now, even though my marketing team is like, you must do the other things. I do have a YouTube channel, but you know, we're going to work on that in 2023. Instagram is the Speakeasy Cooperative. Yes. That's the handle. And then Facebook is being a butthead. So we have at FaithCultureKiss Studio for voice and acting, home of the Speakeasy Cooperative. Gotta love Facebook. And then just, come to the website, the speakeasycooperative.com. I'm sure you'll put that in show notes.
I'll put it all in the show notes.
Yeah, send us a form on the contact page, drop us a DM on the page or in the IG and DMs, come and comment, follow, and share your opinion. We, with the Speakeasy Cooperative, which is the main thing that we get to, and I get to interact in, right now we're like, we really would love to have more artists' perspectives because you bring so much to the table. We have so many singer-songwriters there already, and it's so great. I love having more feet on the ground artists in addition to kind of the teachers and the body workers and the other adjacent businesses as well. So just come, and then you can always email me. I mean, honestly, we have our email locked down pretty good. So you'll have to wait for a response, but I mean, it's literally hey@faithculturekiss.com, because that's another thing we haven't transferred over yet.
Pretty doable. And I just have to say, the Speakeasy Cooperative is a fantastic place. It is a great community, and there's tons of knowledge. And I've told you this before, Michelle, but I have been part of, places where it's, oh, sure, come and be part of the community. And I have not engaged in the community part of it at all. And that is not the case in SECO at all. Like, it is a very, the community aspect of it really is a big deal, and people are incredibly supportive of each other, incredibly willing to share knowledge. Like, it is not, I don't know. Sometimes you end up in communities where people they really want to keep their knowledge close to the chest, and
the mindset.
Yeah. And that is not how this functions. It is a very generous community. So if listeners out there, I suggest you check it out. And would you like to talk at all about any programs that you have coming up?
Oh, you're so good, Sarah. I totally forgot. Yeah. So we were talking about this off recording, but yeah, we are getting ready to open the doors for applications to our How to Run Your Biz Without Hating Your Boss 10-month accelerator program. So this program is designed to take business owners through, whether you've been in business for a while and you're doing like a new revenue stream, or you're revamping your business, or you're a brand new business. It kind of sets the stage for all of the areas of business that a person would need to get their mind around in order to build the foundations and create the business that will bring them the most revenue, hopefully in the most efficient manner. And something that's really different about this program is I don't do systems. So you've probably noticed this in SECO, but I don't sell a system. I don't have like the Markwart Deveaux system or anything like that. I'm very much like, here are a bunch of different business models. Here's the way that business models work. Here's how blah, 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 blah. Let's decide what yours is going to be. And we go through these major principles. I try to make it a little like MBA light, so that it's enough information that you don't just get that information for this particular business idea you're going to work on in the program, but we write the workbooks and we structure the curriculum that you could literally do it with any business. We just happen to be focused on artists. But if you wanted to use the same information and the same workbooks and figure out another revenue stream or another business, we are very interested in making sure that people can do that. So it's kind of fun. We had some singer-songwriters in there already. We've had web designers, we've had body workers and voice teachers, and so many podcasters, so many cool people. And so I'm really excited when we open the doors for applications for that. If that sounds something that would be just right what you need, that high level support with the education.
Awesome. When do the doors open for that, or when does the program kick off?
Well, the program kicks off on April 4th. That will be our first Tuesday. So it is on Tuesdays. But we will start selling that. We're cleaning up the sales page right now. We'll probably start selling that the week of the 20th of February.
Okie doke.
And then I'll be doing, because we do applications and interviews. So we'll be going through all of that. We want to make sure it's the right fit at the right time for the right people. As we put together the cohort, because it is a cohort, you become friends real fast, whether you like it or not. Shared trauma. And then, and it runs through January 2024. So
awesome.
It is there to hold your hand every step of the way and give you the information and the application that you would need to do some awesome things with your career and your business.
I love it. Well, thank you so much for joining me today, Michelle. This has been awesome. I have really, really enjoyed this. We went longer than I usually do because this has been a great conversation.
Well, I appreciate you listening to me and giving me space to kind of wax eloquent. You are a joy, and I'm so glad that we're getting to know each other. Thank you, Sarah, for the opportunity.
Well, me too. We will see you again.
Bye.
Bye.